I remember this documentary. It was called "What the Bleep Down the Rabbit Hole." Now it's pop sci shit. It was pop sci shit, but I was a kid when I watched it. It was the first time that I was introduced to the double slit experiment, like the experiment about demonstrating wave particle duality. This documentary, a bit like another documentary that presented dragons as being real and they ate platinum deposits or something and they used it as fuel. Like, I was a kid, like I was being set up for disappointment for both of them because I found out that, like with the dragon not being real, the way the double slit experiment was presented, it was bullshit. It heavily implied that it was affected by consciousness, whatever the hell consciousness was, not just interference with the waveform by like switching the light on, or doing anything in general and causing it to collapse, or it was like what's the term in video games, like foveated rendering, like you turn the camera too fast and shit hasn't loaded yet. It's like a glitch in the Matrix. All this shit. Like, where am I going with it? Uh, it's just why I fucking hate Reddit. Like, I hate Reddit shit. Like anything that sounds like fedora tippery, like my psychological immune system kicks in, or like childhood cringe trauma. Like, I can't help it. Like Sam Harris stuff, Dawkins, shit about spaghetti monsters, like old moldy meme points, all of it. Like, I'm not even religious. I mean, I'm not anti-religious. I hate the arrogant cuntiness of the boot of the like now that it's on the other foot culturally. Uh, the pro-deterministic argument. What am I doing the video for? Like, what the whole setup is to do with free will. Uh, the pro-deterministic argument for free will, to me, it just comes across as like fate for atheists. The same way that I feel something like the arguments around simulation theory are kind of like sci-fi theism for atheists, but without penalties for masturbating. I might do something on that. I might do something on that next. Uh, uh, I can say for free will that I can choose to blink, and even though I can take a step back and let it happen automatically, and that's more efficient. Like, why do something like manually? Why manually blink? That's a waste of mental bandwidth. Uh, like tying knots as well for abseiling. Like, I don't have to manually, consciously choose everything. I don't have to. I've got muscle memory, and that works automatically. Uh, like, I can say, oh, well, I can choose to blink, but the counterpoint is always going to be like, aha, like someone told you to blink, or you're only blinking because you want to prove a point that you can blink, and billiard balls, dominoes, lumps of cells, all that shit. If you just keep on working things backwards infinitely, you've never done anything for yourself. And at that point, like, just being like pedantic, it's like, okay, fine, fuck. Like, the trick that I feel is played, like, with wordplay is when we say you don't have free will. Where are you? As in a set of processes running on neurological hardware that are stacked on top of each other. Like, where do you draw the line for where you as a thing stops? Because we're not talking about you, just you as a complete entity. Uh, and also, like, when you zoom out from a person and you're talking about like all the variables in the universe that could be calculated, what level of analysis, when you zoom out, are we going to say that every variable can be held, like, can be accounted for? Uh, the stand-in that I like to use for arguments around free will is a random number generator. In a deterministic universe, a black box that generates random numbers is technically not random. The black box, it sits in a deterministic world, so whatever's going on inside, it's going to generate those random numbers. But the black box is kind of like an event horizon, if you think about it. Like, from the outside looking in, you can't see how it's working. And like, technically, like Reddit, actually, like, if it sits in a deterministic universe, then the numbers aren't actually random. Yeah, but if you could see beyond that event horizon, like, what does that make you? Like, what's the vantage point that you're seeing, uh, like, the number generator in totality from? It sounds like the atheistic equivalent, like whatever the level is, of like divine but mechanical omniscience and omnipresence. Like, it's like in simulation theory, actually, if you had like top level access, and you looked at the back end of the code running on the hardware controlling the simulation that we live in, you think, oh yeah, it's like, of course, but that makes you kind of like God, doesn't it? Like, when religious people say you have free will, they're not saying that there isn't something above them that can, like God, like omniscient, omnipresent, can calculate all those variables. Like words of God, like, oh boo, that's dumb. But simulation theory, it's like, oh, like we're like fractalized projections of emergent phenomena from the source code that and the pool of energy from which all things, and it's like, yeah, like whatever. Like, but going back to free will, uh, no, something more important than free will and all that, I think, is everything that gets in the way of having it or expressing it or showing, proving that you do have it. Not everyone has it, in my opinion. Like, it's not to say, oh, like these people are like P zombies or they're NPC and they're not capable of it. Some people, the way that they act, the way that they behave, they are essentially puppets. They're not really that much better than that. We're all puppets in our own way. We're animated by narratives, compulsions. They're like strings on our marionette. We are blinded by filtered lenses that we see the world through. We're funneled into solved games. What are the ways that you and I and we and everyone, all of humanity, is funneled into a series of solved games? And maybe in the future it might be funneled into outcomes with far tighter controls, far less unpredictability in individual outcomes, uh, like the wave particle duality. Like, I see free will kind of like a waveform that can be collapsed if you interrupt it, if you put something in its way. You don't, in this digital era, you don't need brute force. Uh, like, you don't need a computer, like mechanically. You'd make a lot of money if you could do it, but you don't need a computer to brute force what's going to happen next and next and next in the stock market. Not if you can use people's strings to establish trends in advance, so that means that you've stacked up what's going to happen next. Like the casino, like you don't know at the casino, if you're running it, what the outcome of every game is going to be, but you know that the sum total of all the games, the house is going to win more often than not, because if that wasn't the case, you wouldn't be in business at all. Uh, the black box, the event horizon of human unpredictability, uh, like it can be broken, like it can be collapsed. You can funnel people into solved games, into computable prediction models, and people can do that themselves. Like back to the double slit, the waveform that collapses under observation, free will as a kind of pseudo collapsible waveform in this can be collapsed through advanced computation, through you sharing too much, you sharing your thoughts, your ideas, putting your questions into Google, all the processes in your head, you as a set of processes that you transpose into words and actions that you put online, all your likes and dislikes, that model of you that someone can build can get tighter and tighter, making it easier, like the trends in advance, to get in front of you, like stepping stones. Team red, team blue, you change the topography of the environment you're in, kind of like digging channels so that like the water flows down the hill, but then you can kind of split it and you can control the streams. I don't know. I'm going off the cuff. The trick that I think is played is that people argue about free will, but they don't take note of all the serious ways that they are funneled into solved games where free will, if you had it, pretending that you do have it, if you do, I believe you do, but let's just say that you do, well, your ability to express it correctly vanishes. I believe you have free will, but I also believe that it's a choice. It's a choice whether or not you want to move beyond those strings and those lenses and those solved games. But if you're born into solved games, you don't question them. That's my opinion on free will.